We all know the pyramids of Giza. They're iconic, right? But what if? What if they're hiding something? A secret that's not inside them, but deep, deep in the rock beneath their foundations. We're talking about a recent announcement, a discovery so huge it could literally rewrite history as we know it. So let's get into it.
Yeah, we've always looked at the pyramids and thought, wow, that's it. That's the main attraction. But this new claim, it flips that whole idea on its head. It makes you wonder, what if these incredible structures are just the tip of the iceberg? What if they're just giant markers pointing to something even bigger, buried way down below? Okay, so this isn't some old legend or a bit of speculation. No, this whole thing kicks off with a very recent, very real scientific announcement. And when I say it went viral, I mean it exploded online. And for good reason. It promises to challenge everything. And I mean everything we thought we knew about where ancient Egypt really came from.
So, picture this. It's March 15th, 2025. A research group, they call themselves the Kafr-Sar Project, steps up for a press conference, and they drop a bombshell. They claim that by using satellite data, they found these massive, completely unknown structures hiding right under the Pyramid of Khafre, the second biggest one at Giza. All right, so their claim comes in two parts. The first part starts right inside the pyramid's base. The scans apparently picked up 5 vertical spaces, voids. The team calls them Djed columns. And if you know your Egyptian mythology, that's a huge deal. The Djed was a super powerful symbol. It represented the backbone of the god Osiris, the lord of the afterlife. But hold on, because this is where it gets really wild, like science fiction wild. The team announced that deep in the bedrock, we're talking under the pyramid now, they found 8 gigantic hollow tubes. They're set up in 2 neat rows of 4. And get this, each one has what looks like a spiral path winding around it. And all these shafts, they lead down to 2 huge cube-shaped chambers. And the depth? You're not going to believe this. They're saying these shafts go down 648 meters. Let that sink in. That is almost 2/3 of a kilometer, straight down into solid rock. To put that in perspective, that's deeper than some of the tallest skyscrapers in the world are tall. Just, wow. Okay, so the big question is, how on earth did they see this? They didn't dig a single hole. Well, the answer is some pretty incredible tech that basically lets us see right through stone and sand from space. The technology is called synthetic aperture radar, or SAR for short, and it's pretty amazing. You have satellites orbiting way up there, hundreds of miles above us, and they beam down these special radar signals. These signals can actually go through the ground and give us a picture of what's hiding underneath. So here's how it works. In a nutshell, the satellite sends down radio waves. Those waves hit stuff underground and bounce back. Things with different densities, like solid rock versus an empty chamber, reflects the waves differently. The satellite picks up all those echoes, and then some super powerful computers crunch all that raw data and turn it into a picture. And on that picture, different colors can show you where there's solid rock and where there might be a void. Now, you know the saying, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And to claim this big, you better believe the scientific and archaeological communities had some thoughts. And they didn't hold back. The skepticism rolled in almost immediately. And let's be super clear here, nobody is really questioning the SAR technology itself. It's proven stuff. The real debate, the huge question mark, is all about interpretation. Did the Khafre-Sar project team actually read this super complex data the right way? So one of the first big criticisms came from a researcher named Jeffrey Drum, and he pointed out a really big problem. He said, look, in these scans, some of the chambers we know exist inside the pyramids, well, they just don't show up. But these brand new giant voids do. You see the issue? That kind of inconsistency is a massive red flag for other scientists. Then you've got Matt Simpson from the Ancient Architects channel, and he brought up another giant hurdle, engineering. The sheer scale of what's being claimed here, especially how deep these shafts are supposed to go, it's just beyond anything we know about construction from any period of recorded history. The question is simple: how could anyone have built this back then? So if you boil it all down, the critics' main concerns are these. The data just doesn't seem consistent. The research team hasn't been totally open about their methods. These anomalies could easily just be natural geological features, like cracks and fissures in the bedrock. And maybe the biggest practical problem, the water table at Giza is really high.
Any structure that deep would almost certainly be completely flooded.
But okay, that's not the end of the story, not by a long shot. Because what makes this whole thing so fascinating, so tantalizing, is that these wild new claims, they don't just exist in a bubble. They actually connect in some really interesting ways to stuff we already knew was at Giza.
See, for a long time now, we've known that the Giza Plateau is basically like Swiss cheese underground. It's full of a huge natural cave system. There's a famous entrance called the Tomb of the Birds, and people have actually gone in and mapped a whole bunch of this hidden subterranean world. And this is where it gets really, really interesting. Let's rewind the clock a bit, way before this 2025 announcement. We're going back to 2007. There was satellite imagery from a totally different satellite called Terrasar X, and it saw something. Something that, looking back on it now, is pretty remarkable.
What did it see? Well, this old data showed two clear, dark, straight shadows under the sand. They looked like underground tunnels, and they were stretching from the area where we know the caves are, and they were pointing directly at the northwestern corner of the second pyramid, the exact same spot as this new, controversial discovery. Kind of gives you chills, right?
So this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. This is where the hard data, the scientific critiques, and the known history all crash into something else entirely: ancient Egyptian mythology. Could it be that the answers, a blueprint even, have been hiding in their ancient stories this whole time? Look, if these things are real, they just seem way too complex for the pyramid builders of 2500 BCE. It just doesn't add up. And that's led some people to wonder, could they have been built by a much, much older culture? An elder culture, maybe? One that survived some kind of global cataclysm way back around 10,800 BCE and might even be connected to the people who built incredible sites like Göbekli Tepe? And this is where the story takes a turn that is just mind-blowing. One of the oldest creation myths in Egypt is about the Ogdoad. These were 8 primeval gods, 4 pairs of them, who existed in the primordial darkness and the primordial waters before creation. Now, think about this data. 8 shafts, arranged in 2 rows of 4, located deep underground, in darkness, and built right down where they would hit the water table. The parallels, they're just staggering. So here's where we're at. We're left with this massive question. On one hand, you have this absolutely sensational claim about a lost world buried beneath Giza. On the other hand, you've got some very real, very valid scientific skepticism. And kind of bridging the gap between them, you have these incredible connections to caves we know are there, and to these ancient myths. The only thing we know for sure, the search for what's really under the Giza Plateau is just getting started. And that leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? What are we really looking at here? Is it just a ghost in the machine, a phantom in the data, a simple misreading of some squiggly lines? Or are we on the brink of discovering a completely lost chapter of our own history, one that points to a civilization that was way older and maybe way more advanced than we ever thought possible? I guess only time and a lot more science is going to give us that answer.